So we're here with Michael DeBar, who, I mean, people may know you. I sound like Troy McClure in The Simpsons. You may know Michael DeBar from, I mean, MacGyver, Detective, Silverhead, multiple film and TV roles, your music career. But for a lot of people of the 80s, how people were introduced to you, and among them were some of the 1.9 billion people who
Isn't
watched
that
Live Aid.
crazy? I know.
So, I mean, basically, you had the most daunting gig imaginable for people watching this. You replaced Robert Palmer in Power Station. So, I just kind of want to go back to I just want to unpack this because I don't even imagine how, even with all the experience you'd had in show business, how you could have handled such a situation. So, how did you even end up in Power Station and kind of at the last minute? I don't even think you were in Power Station for very long before the Live Aid opportunity came up.
No, I mean I wasn't. We hadn't done any gigs. It was an extraordinary vibe, you know. I was with Don Johnson in Miami, of course, and we were just gallivanting around. We were doing a record together, me and him. I get a call. Come to New York. John Taylor and Andy Taylor want to see you and talk to you about this project. And what? You know, it's out of the blue. It's like saying Rudolph Nureyev wanted to dance with me. I mean, it was an absurdity when you think about it. And I got on the plane and I went to New York and I go into the office that they had and they're looking very nervous because this is a 6 month, millions of dollars at stake,
They
you
had a
know.
tour, they had a tour coming up as well.
Yes, they had a tour coming up, and the album was great. Robert Palmer was an old friend of mine, and all of that. But it was a very interesting thing for me, like spiritually in a way, because he has so many fans. Duran Duran, obviously, so many fans. I love Duran Duran, as a result of being with them and working with them. What had happened was I was in this band Checkered Past with Jonesy and all of that. Steve Jones, the Pistols, who, as you know, are doing brilliantly. New singer, but so we kind of knew each other. But there I am in this office, they're looking so sad because there's a lot of money at stake, and I could care less because all my life it's been like that. Things like that have popped up out of nowhere, and that was a big pop. you
Well,
know?
why did Robert Palmer, like they had a gig, they obviously, I
Yeah,
mean, I think the only time they ever performed publicly might have been Saturday Night Live. There might have been a couple other things,
there was that, but you see,
but they like,
here's the
had
issue.
this big hit album and they had a
Yeah.
tour planned.
Girls, young girls, not his audience. It's as simple as that. He did not want to play to young teenage girls. He was a soul singer, an R&B singer, very dedicated to the world of Gary U.S. Bonds and all of the great African American brilliance. That's what he loved in a suit and tie. Meanwhile, me, I'm in a bikini and eyeliner. So
You're the
I
man for the
fit
job.
in
Wait,
with John and
he
Andy.
literally like after all, I mean, they made a whole album together. They made
Yeah,
videos together. After all that, when Power Station had success, he's like, I don't want to do Live Aid. I don't want to tour
yeah.
because of I just don't like that odd. Like, really?
6 months it was the tour. He had another album under his, thing, and he was doing that record, and he just felt it went back and forward. I mean, it's hilarious, really. It's a movie. That night, after being with John and Andy, they flew me to London. Actually, it was John and Tony Thompson, and they flew me to London that night. I hadn't slept for 24 hours on the plane, went to London, go into the studio I was told to be in. There was a limo waiting for me at Heathrow Airport. There I went, to the space's studio. 5 hours I waited, exhausted. And Andy shows up with two bodyguards. Andy, and these are they're big guys. And he says, "Well, yeah, go in and sing something. Get it, get it on or something in there." So I go in, sing a verse and a chorus. He said, "Let's go shopping."
What'd you sing a verse and a chorus of a Power Station song?
Yeah, get it on.
Oh yeah, obviously. I mean,
T Rex or my vibe, all of that.
not only were a lot of people introduced to you via Power Station, but I think some people were introduced to T-Rex via Power Station because, that song was a big hit for Power Station when Bang
Huge.
Gong, or it was called Get It On, I guess here, was remade by them. So yeah, kind of
Yes.
made sense. You had that glam background,
I
which
had the
is
glam
something
vibe,
all the Duran guys love and come from.
but we'd already, they'd already seen me perform because we opened for them, a couple of times. And this is Steve Jones, Tony Sales, Rigel Harrison, and the dearly departed Clem Burke. It's a great band, rocking band. And that's how they got a hold of me, thin, rocking, eye makeup. It made so much more sense, than Robert, who is, a beautiful guy. I mean, incredible singer and writer and composer, and he had a certain sort of thing about him that he didn't want to do what he didn't think he fitted into. The record is great. It really is some great songs, and he sings them beautifully.
Maybe
And
he didn't think it was going to be as big a hit as it was. Maybe he thought it
no,
was
he
just going
didn't.
to, yeah.
Exactly. Precisely. You should be a manager also as the best rock and roll journalist in history. But, I had a good time, and they were nice boys, and I enjoyed the vibe. Live Aid itself, of course, was very different from anything anybody had ever expected. As you said earlier, there's 2 billion people.
Yeah.
And I'm walking around bumping into Joan Baez and Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Bob Dylan and Ronnie Wood and Neil Young and you name it.
Well, before we get
Backstage was unbelievable.
I absolutely have so many questions about that. You were on Miami Vice with Don Johnson and the Duran guys, but that was after this? Was that after that, or was it?
Long after.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was under the impression you met on the Miami Vice set. So yeah, you sign on. Do you know actually if they considered any other singers once Robert Palmer bailed, or were you the first choice, or did they
I was the
audition
one
anyone
and only
else?
choice, yes. There were other people on the list because it was so funny. They were both exhausted and, shall we say, changed in another kind of a way. Also, you know what I'm talking about. There they are in front of me, and there's a list in John's hand. And I look down and I read all these names. I won't tell you who.
Come on, give me a couple.
Oh, absolutely not. We are a couple. Are you kidding? Come on. So,
Can I guess?
That's a whole other story.
Can I guess?
What?
I don't know. I couldn't even actually think who might have been possibly.
Oh, there's so many
running.
lead singers.
Brian Ferry, maybe, but he had Roxy Music still at that time. So,
yeah, but he just stands there. I mean, God bless him. Brilliant, but it's not exciting.
Well, I mean, Robert Palmer just stood there. So yeah, I mean, I guess they needed, especially with a stage that big. So how many days did you have to rehearse once they picked you?
3 days. There's no telly in the front, with the lyrics. That was way, way before they got that. I had to learn every single word of those songs.
So
and 3 days to do it in,
It's interesting
because the next day we went to play in some Santa Barbara or something. I don't remember.
The day after Live Aid.
The day after Live Aid, we went and did a gig. I can't remember where. There were so many. 6 months.
It's crazy. So how come at Live Aid, I mean, you only, the time slots were pretty short for all the bands, but you didn't do Some Like It Hot, but you guys did Murderous, which was never a single. I'm sure that's an interesting, and am I correct in that you opened with that?
We opened with that, and it's an Andy song. I thought it was a great song. He was so talented, Andy. But he was a rock and roll guitar player. And I think that's why he left, because he's not a rhythm and blues cat, Well,
I think he probably, he loved probably being in Power Station, because that was.
Yeah, and John, yes, of course. And John is very much R&B, as you know. I mean, he's very rhythmic, and he's not like hardcore, Cream,
yeah.
or something like that. It's a very, John Taylor, I love him. He's such an incredible person, and he got sober too because of me.
Oh, amazing. Because of you. What do you mean?
Yeah, because I was sober for, I got sober in 1981, and this is 1985, and we're on his plane, and he's drinking, and we had a little chat, and he ended up getting sober, as did Andy.
Very
so
cool.
I brought more than music to that experience.
Amazing. So let's actually, now let's get to this whirlwind experience. In the course of less than 2 weeks, you're now on stage in Philadelphia with all these huge people, and it's like one of the most, to this day, I think one of the most widely viewed TV broadcasts of all time. Like I said,
yes.
Almost 2 billion people. Were you nervous? Like, what was going through your brain?
Well, I've got to say, ever since I was a kid, I was into Soviet love and all of that. And I'd been in many, many movies, 15 movies, I've done 120 hours of television by that time. I mean, that much. So, getting nervous is not in my, I just did it, step for step, song for song, word for word, and had a good time. I mean, that's the key to it. Enjoy yourself. They were great songs, and I loved them both. And also, we had other singers. Curtis was one of them, great singer, conga player, Tony Thompson on drums. It was an incredible band, horns, the whole thing. Do you like the way I did horns?
I did. I liked your
And
miming. Well,
thank you.
were John and Andy specifically nervous? I mean, the way I remember Power Station, I was just mentioning how like this was Andy's kind of chance to flex those Guitar Hero muscles he didn't really get to do so much in Duran Duran.
Right.
Like this band was getting a lot of attention, as I mentioned, probably a lot more attention than Robert Palmer bargained for, and a lot of people who had kind of obviously very wrongly discounted Duran Duran as some fluffy teen band were like, oh, these guys can really play. This is like legit. Like this is real, whatever.
Yes.
They're with Tony Thompson, who's a legend, whatever. So like they had to have been nervous, not playing to such a big crowd. They were also, playing with Duran that day. We'll get to that. But they had to have been nervous because they have a new singer. Lots of things can go wrong, and it's a huge audience. Like what was their mindset that day?
Very nervous and very frightened about what could happen, especially Andy that had prayed for something like this, and now it's happening in Palmer Split. It was not cool, really, to do that to them in a sense. I mean, God bless him, but, a week away from a 6 month tour and he quits. That's kind of heavy. If somebody did that to me, I don't know what I'd do to him, but look, I turned all Cockney all of a sudden. It was beautiful to be with them. They were very nervous.
I bet.
Big. I mean, everybody was. Jagger was. Everybody was scared, because it was 2 billion people and no rehearsal, none of that. Bill Graham was an asshole up there. Bill Graham, you know who Bill Graham
Yeah,
is.
he was. I know he was running a tight ship because he had to be. Yeah, he was. Didn't he yell at you or something?
Yeah, he yelled at Andy. Andy, was like his amp blew up. And, and we were on stage just standing there. And I was laughing my ass off. I was thinking, can it get any weirder? And he was shouting at us all, and I was laughing at him. And then suddenly everything fixed and plugged in, and we rocked, But yeah, they were very nervous. They're young. They were in their early 20s. I was
Did
in my
they?
early 80s.
When did his amp blow up? Did it blow up during a song or like? I don't
It
remember
began,
seeing.
they blew up before we even played the
Uh,
show. It was terrible. An amp was broken, and Andy was desperate, and John's going, oh, jeez, and Tony's going, because he was so cool, Tony Thompson. It was a great treasure for me to be able to play with him. I mean, he's one of the
I
greatest
bet.
drummers, as you said, ever. And we kicked in and, get it on and murderous, and we did it, and then we got off, and they got off in another kind of way.
Mm. You can
I
feel
was
free to.
sober.
Yeah, they weren't yet. You hadn't had they hadn't listened to your talk yet, is what you're trying to say. They were.
Exactly.
How did the audience receive you? I don't know. We have social media and stuff now. Now, if like it's like, oh, a lead singer's quit, has been replaced. Here's the word would get around a lot faster. But I imagine there's people at Philly that day who were like, that doesn't look like Robert
Yes.
Palmer. What's going on?
Much more handsome, yes. And so, no, but the audience, I don't usually pay too much attention to people in the front. I try because, especially there, because there's thousands and thousands of people there. But and so I play to the room, not to the front row, because a lot of those lead singers that are young and haven't quite sussed it out yet, you will all like sing to these people. Whereas there are 50,000 other people there. So you've got to be big about it. What happened, though, yes, there was a lot of anger from young men. One guy, I'm out on stage right, and I go over there and singing, and this bucket of water is literally it's slow motion. It was coming towards me like this. And I was going to be splashed in front of 2 billion people. And I dodged it, and it went all over John Taylor. So,
Did it mess up his hair or his eyeliner?
Oh no, the
Good. That's the
little bit
important
of
thing.
his makeup slipped, but other than that, so you got to get used to the fact that there are people, no matter who you are, Robert Plant, I don't care, somebody's not going to like you, and you
Yeah.
can't worry about that, you know.
But I imagine it did get into, I mean, lots of people obviously love Duran Duran, including myself. But, I've talked to Duran Duran before about, I mentioned just now, like how people kind of wrongly dismiss them as not being a serious musicians or a serious band. So, I do feel that probably got under their skin as they were, and they were playing twice that day. So I do want to ask you a little bit more of the mindset of them, because famously, Live Aid was the last time that all Fab Five original members of Duran Duran played together. They didn't
That's
play
right.
together for 18 years. That was their last show. And, it was an interesting time because I can't even think at the moment of another mainstream band that at the peak of their fame split off into two supergroups because Arcadia was going on that same year. And, and I love the Arcadia record as well. But, I can just imagine the tensions, all the stuff you already mentioned. And then, of course, they never performed for almost 20 years after that. But, there's the famous, like, you sounded okay, but unfortunately, Simon Le Bon hit that note, that bad note in during A View to a Kill, I believe it was, in front of 2 billion people. And whoever was working the cameras that day deserved a bonus because they like somehow it might have been just coincidence, but after Simon hit the bad note, they cut to Andy, and he just had a look on his face like, "Oh God,"
Yeah.
like he was not stoked. I mean, who could blame him? And then yeah, that was it. So I'd love your insight into whatever. Obviously, Andy wanted to do other things, but you were obviously a witness to all of that fracturing that
Yeah,
was going
Andy
on.
Is a real pro and a real rock and roll guitar player. He wasn't like like a R&B shuffle thing. No, he was more Clapton-esque and and all of that vibe. I mean, he was a great guitar player, but he wanted to play rock and roll, and they're not a rock and roll band. You know,
Yeah.
I love Duran Duran, and I think they were terrific, but those songs are not rock and roll songs, and he would literally just have to play rhythm because there were no solos, no guitar solos really. And when they were the producers obviously created little licks that he could play that people would grasp rather than the wonderful rarity of tough animalism in terms of rock and roll. I mean, John Taylor is not an animal. Well, he's kind of like a giraffe.
He's a beautiful creature, we'll say.
Of
He's a
course,
beautiful
you
specimen.
kidding? He's fabulous. I loved him. Yeah, we did a movie together too, John and I. As
Sugartown. We had to
Sugartown,
have
which
a
is a
whole
great
Sugartown
movie.
sidebar.
But
And
Andy wanted to be Eric Clapton essentially, and a bluesy rock and roll guitar player. That's why he, left. And
yeah,
I could see that because the power station he could really play. When you watch that show, I just watched it this morning. He's really into the guitar playing and singing, and he's really got a vitality about him that one didn't see him in the videos looking like that. They'd be on a canoe in the Bahamas, and Simon Le Bon tied to the boat. But
and he'd get typhoid or something because he fell off an elephant.
that's exactly right.
Andy was always having bad luck. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he
was
did. He
maybe in the wrong
did.
band, I guess. But what
Yeah.
was yeah, just obviously did you witness did you have a feeling? I mean, obviously, I guess I'm just wondering, were you kind of like, oh, Duran Duran are not long for the course, like they're breaking up or Andy's leave, like, that did not go well. Did you witness any, maybe not fighting or whatever, but did you feel a vibe that this was like,
No, not at all. They really didn't talk to each other much, and
mm,
there was no how could you do that? None of that. That never. I didn't see any of that. But then
right?
again, you see, what I would do is I would arrive, I would put the gear on, I would go out, I would sing, I would leave. They could do their coke, they could do the thing. I'm sober. I left. I used to, run with the bodyguards. So that was what I would do every morning. Early. So I wasn't really part of their personal lives.
Is that
I,
why I was always wondering why? I mean, eventually, way down the road, there was a second Power Station album, which I don't think most people know about because it kind of came and went. But I was always, did you ever record with Power Station, or was there ever a talk about,
yes, I
doing an
did. I
album?
wrote a song called, for Commando, the Schwarzenegger movie, and we recorded that, which I wrote. and that was pretty cool. But by then, it wasn't. I think they wanted to get off on their own grooves. John wanted to do his thing, and he wanted to. I could see it splitting apart. They weren't even talking, and I was there singing away,
Mm.
and that was that.
Andy and John weren't talking.
Well, no. Not
No?
really. I mean, not, hey man, how you do? There's no
Yeah.
friendship, no sort of rock and roll, embracing or anything like that. It seemed like it was a job,
Yeah.
and I was way past that. I mean, I'd already made the money. I was on telly killing people, and and I didn't. It wasn't about money for me really, although they were very sweet about that. But they didn't really talk much. Is what I saw.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, it was interesting because Duran Duran fans like myself watching Live Aid, even though there was that little bad moment, which any singer can have, but unfortunately Simon had it in front of so many people. I didn't watch it and go, oh, that's the last time I'll be seeing Duran, all five of those guys on stage for the next 18 years. But I just
Yeah.
wondered if you had any insight in that. But you were a fly on the wall for a lot of things. So I definitely want to ask about other things you saw at Live Aid because you
Mm,
mentioned other people, even the legends. Everyone
mm.
was nervous except you. You were like the only person that wasn't nervous. So,
Yeah. Well, why?
um,
It's such a silly thing to be nervous because it shows just an impotence, which is obviously uncool. But even Mick, even and Madonna was a.
yeah, I want to hear
I
about
know the
Madonna.
words. I know the words. I mean,
Really?
they were all scared shitless, every one of them.
Well, let's talk
Uh,
about Madonna because she was, I
yeah.
mean, she was big at this point, like a Virgin had come out and the VMAs had happened and all that, but she was still a rising star. She
Yeah.
wasn't a headlining act there.
No.
Tell me about, yeah, she was, you never think about Madonna being nervous, of all people.
Yeah, she wasn't the queen by then. She was early. She was a princess, sure, but everybody was nervous. You've got Dylan, Ronnie Wood, and Keith Richards, and they're all playing in a different key. That's what happened. They're all so whatever. I don't know if they're on narcotics or not. I wouldn't even begin. But they were, shall we say, out of tune in many
Mm,
ways. And every act that I saw, and I really watched everybody
mm.
just to see just how good they were. A lot of people were just getting loaded back in I'm sober, and they're in their little caravans, doing lines, and I'm not talking about writing. And so that was heavy.
Or reading their lines for a script. That's not the
Yeah,
kind.
really, really. But so everyone, there was a certain sense of 2 billion people, man, and people stuck to that. I didn't stick to that. I just had a microphone, a bunch of people, and as I had for 20 years.
Weren't you and Madonna friends or weren't you on American Bandstand together? Am I imagining
Yeah,
that?
that's a whole other story,
Well,
darling.
you can tell it to me.
No, I can't,
You can,
because
oh,
I can whisper it to you later.
sure,
But
sure.
but there's a lot of that was going on. The most interesting person there was Joan Baez
How so or why?
because she was hated it and was riffing on how everybody was awful and that only her songs were really meant something to the audience. It was the weirdest thing. She thought she was Bob Dylan. you know I mean, there was that kind of irrational behavior, and I think that was her way of being scared.
Or do you think
Yeah.
it, I mean, I guess maybe the way I interpreted that story was it could be easy to forget what this concert was for, that it was, because it was just like this big
Oh,
all-star
nobody
fun.
was thinking about that. They were
But
thinking about
maybe
what they're
that,
going to wear.
but maybe that was what she meant, that no one had the spirit of
I think
charity
that
or
was the hook.
activism.
Yeah, for her, probably, because that's what she does, doesn't she? Cares about the world. But it seemed kind of weird to me. Everybody was in a different state of mind than I've ever seen any artist ever. It was one of those. It was fascinating. At one point at the end, we're all at the same hotel also. You
Mm.
can imagine what that was like. I was on a couch with DJ, Don Johnson had come up from Miami. He introduced us, as you know. And on that thing was Dylan, Jagger, Keith, Clap, all these different superstars, and yours truly. And I'm sober. You know, I'm in
Did
this
you?
cage of coke.
I mean, a weird question, but were there ever moments like that one where you're just like,
I want
not,
some.
yeah, well, like I want to have
No,
fun. I want to have a drink with my, with the
but it
Zeppelin
wasn't
guys.
fun. Drugs are not fun.
Okay.
They'd be fun for 10 minutes, and then you know they want more and
Yeah.
more and more and more and more, and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'd already been sober for 4 years, and now I'm sitting next to these giants, these icons, desperate for another blow. It was ridiculous, and I left.
You
Went
picked
to
a weird
sleep.
decade to get sober. The 80s was, I mean, I'm glad you did, by
Yeah,
the way, but I'm
that's
just saying,
very
like,
smart. Yeah,
you
that's
picked
very
like the
smart.
decade of cocaine
Yeah,
and excess in all
but
way. I mean, not that the 70s were too, I guess, but the 80s were a big cocaine decade, and I commend you that you could be in a hotel with all these people on this. And a
I
lot of
was
people probably self-medicated before going on stage because of their
no
nerves.
kidding. I mean, it would be a great movie if they could make a movie and not even show them doing performances, but just what happened backstage and at the hotel where we all stayed. I mean, that would make a movie.
Are are you aware there's a musical that's called Just for One Day? Um,
Just for one day,
so,
Bowie.
well, Gary Kemp told me about this because I interviewed him from Spano Ballet recently, and
Yeah.
it's about Live Aid, and it's a musical in London right now. Because I know he's portrayed in it. It's just like he doesn't have a big part in it, but like it's about Live Aid. I wonder if there's someone playing you in it. You should check it out. It's called
Wow,
Just
I
for
didn't
One
know. Well,
Day.
maybe Youngblood could play me. I don't know.
That actually
Yeah.
would make a lot. That would actually be great. I like him a
I
lot.
love him. He's fucking amazing.
Well, let's
Young.
talk, a little bit more about, obviously you were in Philly, so I'm only going to be asking you about things
Yeah.
that took place in Philadelphia at
Yeah.
JFK Stadium. But like, okay, so you did Led Zeppelin played at Philly, right? And
Who?
Led Zeppelin.
Oh, yes, sure. I
So
mean, not with
obviously,
Bonham. That was the difference.
but
Bonzo wasn't there.
obviously you guys go way back for people who don't know who are watching this, your band Detective had been it was a Detective that had been signed to
Yes.
Swan Song. And yeah, you're friends with them and all that. So
Yes.
I don't know how long it had been since you'd seen them, but you're both playing Live Aid, and I talked a little bit about how there was a little bit of a disaster with a Simon Le Bon vocal, but that Led Zeppelin performance was not well received from what I
No.
recall. And I don't know
No.
if you had an eye to that or if you talked to them
I
about
did.
that.
Of course. I love Jimmy and Robert, all of them. I mean, even at Silverhead, they were like behind, they liked me because of Silverhead is what the vibe was. And then
Mm.
Detective, and they got us on Swan Song, but they were not cohesive, and they didn't have that brotherly Zeppelin vibe. Down, down, chicka down, chicka down, that vibe. It was almost coming out of them, the three of them, but it was like a rehearsal or something, and it probably was a rehearsal, but it wasn't as powerful as I think people expected. But that's for many, many reasons, and I'm not here to corrupt the whole thing. But
But how did they
it,
feel about it? Did you talk to them afterwards and they were like, "Oh man,
nobody spoke about it.
oh,
That's
interesting,
the only way to deal with shit like that. What are you going to do?
interesting."
Then you stop, but you didn't do it, and then you didn't, and then I didn't. You can't do that.
You mentioned Mick Jagger as well, who obviously you were friends with as well. And, it's interesting because there was that Tina Turner de-skirting moment, which was iconic at the time.
Yeah.
And now maybe looking at through the lens of now, and it's almost like a less disastrous Janet Jackson, Justin Timberlake moment, because I've never been able to figure out if that was a rehearsed thing with him ripping off her skirt and her going, oh, or if that was actually not rehearsed, in which case it would kind of not be cool. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I mean, those two are probably the two professionals in the world of rock and blues and R&B. Those two, Mick Jagger and Tina. Those two are so allied with the magic of performance. But it was for me. And this is, again, I'm being a critic about it, which is awful. But the vibe was that they were going over. Now Jagger goes certainly over the top when he
We
does his
want.
thing.
Hmm.
I mean, he's so athletic, and she is too. So you've got them banging into each other and the microphone falling off. But that was my favorite piece, those two. Mick Jagger and Tina Turner. That's epic. I didn't care whether they couldn't sing it or they were breathless or whatever. Who cares? They're there singing, being. I love them both, Jagger. I mean,
You don't know if that skirt moment was a impromptu, not necessarily anything salacious, but like just a spur of the moment thing, or was that
I
rehearsed?
think so because Jagger, I did that movie with him, and I could tell that he didn't want to ever rehearse. You know, so therefore, I would imagine that they probably didn't even rehearse that song.
I do know that they rehearsed because
Ah,
because I've interviewed John Oates, who, Hall and
right.
Oates were part of that. And he did tell a funny story. He said that, when Mick Jagger came in to rehearse, he acted like you just said. He didn't
Yeah,
like, hit his marks. He was like doing all the stuff. But
yeah,
they didn't rehearse. He told me they did not rehearse that moment, a skirt ripping moment in rehearsal. That doesn't mean they didn't talk about it, but he didn't know that was going to happen. So, but yeah,
yeah,
they did rehearse. I don't know how much they rehearsed or
yeah.
whatever.
But they're both such pros, and they absolutely, have this incredible vibe about them. Both of them, incredible artists, and them at their worst is everybody else's best.
True. So there's some other I'm just going to sort of mention them if you have any
Sure.
like thoughts on these. And also, you mentioned some of your favorites. But okay, Ozzy Osbourne played, Bob Dylan played, Hall and Oates as I mentioned, Tom Petty, Run DMC, who I think might have been the only rap act on the bill. Crosby, Stills and Nash. Phil Collins did the Concord thing between the two.
Tom
Uh
Petty.
Tom Petty was a good one. So, are there any like thoughts on those, or just in general? Are there any other? Because you said you watched everything or most
Yeah,
of everything. What stood out
yeah.
to you as like really like great or not great, but just like memorable performances?
Well, Neil Young,
Mm,
you know, he can do no wrong because he's not there for applause. He's there for himself. That's the big difference, especially with him, because every word he wrote is true, or is writing, uh, is truthful and real and romantic and horrible and all of the things, or cheating on his wife. I mean, he really goes the whole way with the personal vibe. So having him in the afternoon, everybody's crazy and with their drugs and their pot and all of this stuff, and he's singing about something enormously serious. There's a certain kind of, you know. Difference between those two things. He's more than a guitar playing singer. He's a political guy, a spiritually
right.
politicized guy, and he was my favorite. Because he gave everything he's got. Everybody else is pretending, and because of this massive gig.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
did people at the time realize how big and historic it was going to be, or did they
Well, it was
just
so
think,
fast, wasn't it? So
yeah,
it happened so quickly that there wasn't any time to wait for it. It was right there. And everybody, very few people had done any like work on it. It's just in the moment, rock and roll. And in a way, that's great. My favorite though is him and Petty. How can he ever do anything wrong, Tom Petty?
yeah,
Because his songs are so real and so he's not Rudolph Valentino, is he? I mean, he's a brilliant guy, and I love his songs. Patti LaBelle also is
oh,
exquisite, but I love all of that R&B stuff, as you know. And the Cars,
mm,
you know, I mean, it was good. I enjoyed every band. I think it takes a great deal of to go out on that stage in front of all those people is not easy. It's easy for me though.
you're the only one it was easy for. Did you get to spend any time then before, like what was Bob Geldof like? Because Bob Geldof Sir Bob he seems to have a lot of mixed feelings about the Band-Aid and Live Aid legacy. For a very long time he never wanted to talk about it, or he kind of put down. He seems to have come around now. They had a Do They Know It's Christmas documentary out this past year, when the 40th, crazy all this is 40 years, but the 40th anniversary of Do They Know It's Christmas, which is what started all of this. But he
Yeah.
he definitely seemed to have a kind of mixed feelings about the legacy. But what was it like at the time? Did you spend any?
Well,
I think his heart was in the right place for sure.
I can tell you, yeah, but his profession was that he never made it. He was never a rock star. He was a guy who got knighted for making 2 billion people happy. Now, which is better? Could he have had both? Yes. Did he have both? No. He didn't have a, I think he had one number one in England,
It's more than
but
most
he
people
was not a
get.
rock star. He was a
Yeah.
businessman, spiritualist, absolutely. I don't think he liked us very much, because they are sort of the opposite of him. The Duran boys, all beautiful, all playing their own stuff, and I think he saw himself as a Jagger-esque kind of character. But for me, I didn't like the guy very much. I think he did a wonderful thing, um, but I don't think he was a great rock and roll artist.
Hmm.
I think Robert Palmer was. That's for sure. I mean, a brilliant artist, a brilliant writer, one handsome, gorgeous. Geldof, no, he's sort of annoying. He's annoyed. He's not annoying. He's annoyed.
Did you spend any time with him at Live Aid, or probably was too
No,
chaotic?
no time at all. No, I left that to his devices.
What are
And it
your
was
thoughts?
great.
Oh, go
What?
ahead. No, go ahead.
No,
Finish.
it was lovely what he did. There's no question about that. And he got a knighthood for it, which is incredible. Irish rock and roll guy, because he saw himself as a singer, but he wasn't. I mean, a successful singer.
Well, what do you
But
think?
God bless him.
What do you think? It's a kind of more complicated than we probably have time to talk, but there has been talk about what went wrong with the allocation of funds from Band-Aid,
Yeah,
probably USA for Africa, and Live Aid, with like basically good intentions aside, the money raised didn't quite, at least at that time, go to who needed it most. What are
it
and
went into the hands of people that would, of these little countries in Africa, is what happened. They were stolen. The money was stolen by, the crooks over there. And that's really fucking sad.
Yeah, kind of
Because all of
tainted the
those
whole
people,
legacy.
they cared about it. It was such a thing. It was a beautiful thing. But as all beautiful things are, inevitably there's an earthquake. Oh, there's greed. Whenever you got that kind of money hanging out, because it was all, delivered out in terms of helping people, and it all went into the hands of the people that run the country.
Well, it kind of
It's
tainted,
terrible.
unfortunately, the legacy of, but because this was supposed to be such a celebratory occasion. But here we are, literally 40 years later. People are still talking about Live Aid. What do you think it should be best remembered for as a phenomenon? People still talk about this one day, just for one day, like the musical says.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that I take from it is that they managed to get all of these wonderful artists in one place. That in itself is amazing. This is the day we're going to do it, and they actually did it, which was wonderful. Geldof, creating it, saying you got to do this, and it was very severe about it, and I think the wonderful thing was there was a lot of people there who really cared about each other, and so on and so forth. The music was irrelevant. It was the thing itself, the moment itself. That afternoon was an incredible, miraculous moment. Was it a fabulously done musical event? No, I
I
don't
would
think.
say it was. I mean,
Well,
we're still talking about
what
it all
was
this
your
time.
part? What's your favorite act at
Okay,
Live Aid?
like well, I mean, it was the obvious one, but it wasn't at Philly. It was in London. It was Queen. I mean, everyone, that it still is talked about as one of the greatest, if not the greatest performance of all time. I mean, if there's
From
nothing that
who?
from Queen at Wembley, from
Oh, Freddie, forget about it. London's different. I'm talking about,
well, I watched it on TV, but yeah, from
yeah.
Philly. I mean, I remember really liking Simple Minds. They were in Philly, right? I remember, of course, liking Duran Duran, and at the time, not even noticing there was a bump. I didn't even notice there was a bump. No, I was just happy to be seeing him. I just remember just being, I don't, it's interesting. I remember like being excited to see Power
How
Station
old were
because
you?
I was two. No, I was old enough to be watching TV. I was young. I was a child, but
But you're very generous about this. I mean, you know how it works, and you love it, and I love it, and but it was so difficult for everybody, really, because all of those acts, remember, they're coming on for 10, 20 minutes. So they used to getting harder and harder, and then 3 hours later or 2 hours later, they're at their peak. But at this time, you had to come out and do it in 20 minutes. So you
Yeah.
don't feel the vibe, the real strength and energy and talent. You don't have enough time for that. And everybody's waiting for somebody else.
Was there a lot of egos that you noticed? Was
Oh,
there any?
no, none.
Oh, that's
Are
good.
you kidding? I mean,
Okay,
yes.
you mean, yeah, of course.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, yes, of course. That's my dressing room. I mean, yeah, it's always there, isn't it? But it was great that somebody did that and put it together. There's no question. I mean, it was beautiful. And I think people really got a lot from it. That is, the artists got a lot from it too, that they could be friends. Because often you're on the road, you don't meet anybody except your own roadies.
Were there any moments, as we kind of wrap up, put a bow on the whole fly on the wall stuff? Were there any moments, it could have been at the Four Seasons Hotel, it could have been somewhere at the stadium, where you saw like two people hanging out or
Arguing.
talking again? Well, not even that, just being like, I can't believe I'm watching those two people
Oh,
hang out and talk.
yes.
Like,
Oh, yeah. Well, the Mick and Tina thing was major. It was major. And then suddenly you saw Dylan, you know, and at the door of his like thing, the coach thing and the door, and then he's gone. That was huge for me, Dylan. You
yeah.
know, but Dylan and Ronnie Wood and Keith up there, that was a train wreck. It was a fabulous train rock, I suppose.
I
But it
guess
was
that's
so great to see the three of them together.
why
It
was
was
that a train
beautiful.
wreck? I'm remembering the train wreck of Zeppelin and the brief Duran moment, but I
Well, they
don't
were in
remember that
different
train.
chords. They were
Okay.
they
I'll have
hadn't
to go back and
rehearsed.
watch that.
They
It's the
hadn't.
magic.
And Dylan's like that. He doesn't.
Yeah.
I am not gonna rehearse. You know. And but they were there, and they're gods, and everybody loved it. They were applauding their careers more than
And
anything else.
that's the magic of this event is it when the fact that things like that happened and it was, not they were performing without a net. I don't know if a event like this would happen now. I think things would be much more tightly controlled because yeah, it's one thing to have 2 billion people watching on TV. That's pressure enough. But now there's social media and YouTube and like, if there's a moment that's good or bad, it's gonna go. Things didn't go viral then. If MTV didn't choose to re-air the clip, you saw it once and then it was gone. But now it's like it will just go on forever.
Go on
So
forever. Yeah, but it was brilliant. All of them were great. They came there, they did what they had to do, and it was beautiful. It was very hard for a lot of people, to come on and do 20 minutes. And the thing, and Bill Graham screaming because of the snare drum isn't there for someone. I mean, it was all of that was going on, and that was kind of interesting to everybody. It got them on their feet, really. And it was a beautiful experience to do it. Even if that money went off on another thing, there was a great deal of, in all of the artists, I think, felt that they were doing the right thing. And that's the most important thing about it. Okay, we're doing this okay, let's do something. Because usually you're doing it for your manager, or for your banker, or and you're entertaining the crowd and everything. Everybody felt, I think, that they had to be cool and make money for these poor people out there, millions of people suffering. And
yeah.
that's the most important thing. And they did that, to the best of their abilities.
So even though that was ostensibly why people were there, obviously there was some kind of self-promotion that would come from it. There were certain bands like U2, for example, that I know they were not at Philly, they were in England, but like they would be a breakout performer because they were so great or whatever. So
Yeah.
as I mentioned at the top of this interview, this was a way you were introduced to a lot of people to the MTV generation. So I guess I'll wrap it up by, obviously this was a huge opportunity, not just for you to be in Power Station in general, but to kick it off in this kind of spectacular way. How would you say that Live Aid started you've had so many chapters in your career, but would you say this started a really big new world for you in your career?
Oh, indeed. And I'd written that song Obsession
Hmm.
with Holly Knight, and that we did in 1985. And it allowed me to be able to be heard. I've written a lot of songs, but to get them to the right people is impossible. So now I'm on here with the biggest audience ever. So now they're going to take my calls and my tapes, and it did start. It was wonderful. I was so grateful to all of them, and I love them to this day because I was very grateful to them for getting me on that stage and out and playing for all those people for 6 months.
Awesome.
So it was a delightful experience for me. I love those guys. I think they're terrific, and they've done so well since then. And especially John. I adore John. Yeah, and we got sober together in many, many ways. Even though I was sober for years before that. But I love the guy, and we did a movie together too,
Yep. Well, we'll have
didn't
to
we?
talk about when is the Sugartown anniversary coming up? What year did that movie come out?
I can't remember, but I
We're gonna
have
have to
a
do a
poster
sugar.
of it somewhere.
My
But
dream, Michael, would be to do a Sugartown roundtable. That would be you, Martin Kemp, the other standout, John,
yeah,
Rosanna Arquette,
yeah,
Ali Sheedy, Allison Anders, of course, the director, John Doe. Am I
yeah,
forgetting anyone?
yeah,
Who else was in it?
yeah.
I, we'll
Yeah.
have to, we're gonna have
What
to
a
do.
bunch!
We're gonna have
That's
to do.
enough. I mean, the, all of those people brilliant.
We
Oh,
will.
so good, Sugartown. It
We
was
will do
so
that.
such a great movie.
We will do that some other
Next,
time. There's always
sure.
an anniversary coming up, but in the meantime, are there any parting thoughts you have about Live Aid and the 40th? It was 40 years ago, July 13th, 1985. Just for one
It was a
day.
major chapter for me in my life, no question about it, because of its enormity of saving people's lives. This wasn't let's go rock and roll, baby, and dance and do coke and then, have an orgy and I'll see you tomorrow. It wasn't all of that. It was sort of like that, but it wasn't like that. It was a beautiful moment. And
It can do both. It can be both.
spiritually rock and roll, shall
It
we
can be
say.
both. You can
Yeah, do
save the
both.
world and not you, but you can save the world and have an orgy and cocaine.
Yeah.
Why
Well, I
not?
didn't
Why have
say
to do?
anything about not having an orgy, but we didn't get into that.
I mean,
But
we could, but
yeah, we could.
I
But
could,
it's
but
a beautiful thing. And what's so charming about you is that you know from A to Z what's happening. And I really love you for that because you know
aw.
what it is and you care about it. And whenever I talk to you, I'm always delighted to because you have so much knowledge. And I have a lot of knowledge of what it went down. I've been doing it for decades. And you are so wonderful about bringing this stuff to the people. It's a beautiful thing.
Aw. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you for speaking with me today about, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying all the other things about Live Aid.